What if I told you I could help you understand the Quran better without learning Arabic? I'm not claiming I can, I'm just saying, like, what if? Are you in search of the best, most accurate, and easy to understand Quran translation of all time? It does exist. Except I'm not just going to point you towards a translation. I'm going to hold your hand and take you right through a translation in less than 10 minutes. I'm going to break down word by word the words of Allah in the Quran and compare it to the 10 most popular and well-regarded translations to reveal the true winner. We're about to go down the best kind of rabbit hole you can go down on the internet. So buckle up. Have you ever read an English translation of the Quran and wondered why the language is so outdated? You might have thought, English is my first language, so why is an English translation of the Quran so hard to understand? And let's be honest, most of us hesitate to ask people the meaning of English words if we speak English. With almost 2 billion Muslims on earth and countless scholars, why is there even a single Quran translation today which is still using words like asunder when you can use words like apart instead of asunder? So I've started a project of combining the best English translations of the Quran. And while doing this, I realized something really important. Comparing these translations was actually helping me understand the Quran on a deeper level. Not only are many translations using old, difficult language, but you'll see fairly significant changes in word selection from translation to translation. And that's why in today's video, I'll be going word by word through Surah Ikhlas and comparing the 10 most popular, well-regarded English translations to see what makes sense to modern readers and what doesn't. By the end of this video, in just a few minutes, we will have a clear, modern-day English translation of Surah Ikhlas using my golden rule, which is that even a 12-year-old should be able to understand and grasp it. The first ayah looks simple enough, but when we compare it to the translations, you'll notice something. Some translations refer to Allah as God. This raises a pretty significant question, which is, can Allah really be translated as God? And after doing some digging, I found that Allah is better understood as the proper name for God. Aside from his descriptive names like Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Allah is the most used word in the Quran, and it is the only name of Allah which refers to his essence, not his attributes. It is the proper name that God has given himself. So when Muslims refer to God amongst themselves especially, they should refer to God as Allah, even when they're speaking English. And another reason why God is not a good translation for Allah is because there is already an Arabic word which translates to God, which is ilah, from La ilaha illallah, best translated as there is no God but Allah. You can also say that there is no God but God as a translation of La ilaha illallah, but it's just not as clear as saying there is no God but Allah, because Allah does not correspond to an English word. It's a proper name again. We can understand this on a smaller scale with the example of people's names. A person's name is not translated according to the language. It stays the same regardless of the language being spoken. And I don't think there's harm in saying God instead of Allah when speaking to a non-Muslim audience. So I can't blame some of the translations for doing that. It just depends on who the audience is. And God is the closest approximation to Allah in the English language. It's not perfect, but it works. So let's stick with Allah in the first part of this ayah and move on to the second part of the ayah. In the second part of the ayah, again, we see that by far most of them are simply translating ahad as the one. But we see also another word, the only. It seems to me that the one and only is a good translation because it really emphasizes the uniqueness of Allah. In English, we use the one very casually. And if you imagine a 12-year-old trying to understand this ayah, trying to understand the word ahad as the one and only, it seems to drive the point home significantly better and emphasize the oneness in an important way. Okay, so the first ayah is now complete. Let's move on to the second one. We can see that across the 10 translations, the key word is samad. And I think you'll find it fascinating that this word samad appears only once in the entire Quran, and it's right here. The word samad is often translated using different words. As you'll notice, it's being translated in several different ways. I think it's fair to break it down into 3 different words that are mainly being used to describe or translate the word samad. The first word is self-sufficient, which refers to the fact that he needs nothing. Then there's the word eternal, which is referring to the fact that he is unlimited and he is infinite. The third word being used is absolute, which basically means to exist without dependency on anything, which again goes back to being self-sufficient. Here's what I found interesting. The non-religious root of the word samad refers to something solid or simply something that is not hollow. And if you think about it, this corresponds nicely with the fact that Allah penetrates and sustains all things while nothing penetrates him. A really interesting point that I found in the commentaries is that this attribute of Allah was intended to break and shift the concept among the pre-Islamic Bedouins that Allah needed the help of lesser gods to execute his affairs. So they would pray to lesser gods who were supposed to be his daughters or his associates of some sort. The word as-samad broke the concept that Allah needed assistance. There is a lot of depth in the word samad that I think would be very beneficial to reflect on. And moving on, if something is truly self-sufficient, it is also eternal and absolute. So I feel like self-sufficient is the best word to use to translate as-samad. As I was looking into several translations, I found one with this beautiful phrase, which I really feel like a translation should have, which is independent of all while all are dependent on him. Typically I don't like it when translations have too many parentheses, but I just feel like this small little description one-liner helps the reader reflect on this really important word. Moving on to the third ayah, it seems like all the translations pretty much agree on it, except that we see in one instance born and another father and son, which both I don't think are good translations for lam yalid wa lam yulad, because they are a bit too specific and limited. I wonder why people are using the word begets, because this is not a word we really use at all in daily life. But then I looked into a thesaurus, and long story short, any other word that I put in the place of the word begets became very awkward to say. So because begets is not a commonly used word in modern English nowadays, I think it helps to add a small description in parentheses, which is he has no offspring, nor is he offspring. I'd really like to know what you guys think about using the word offspring, if that really helps or if that's really not necessary. I'd like to hear about that in the comments. Okay, so now we have the first 3 ayahs done. One more to go. In the 4th ayah, there seems to be 3 different ways that it's being expressed. There is none comparable to him, there is none equal to him, and there is none like him. Equal and like feel a bit too casual and vague to me. Saying someone is not equal to something doesn't necessarily mean that the thing being compared is unique in every way, nor does it mean that the thing being compared is beyond. It's just very vague, So I don't like that about the word equal. And the word like is even more open-ended and vague. So I think the clear winner here is the word non-comparable to him, because this really brings out the inability of the human mind to grasp Allah. The human mind really uses comparison and context to grasp things. And Allah is beyond all of this. So this non-comparable is, I feel like, the best word here. Okay, so now that we have the 4th one done, we have a completed translation of Surah Ikhlas. And I really hope I helped you understand this ayah better and brought out some new facets and way of looking at it. with the different translations. If you know anyone interested in understanding the Quran better and how it's translated and comparing the word by word, please share this video with them. That'll help support this channel. Also, you can take a look at the word by word translations of the Quran on this channel. I'm slowly creating a series of videos which feature word by word translations of the Quran with an easy to understand modern English translation. I've never really been able to find everything that I really wanted on the Quran in one screen as I'm looking at the translation. Like, for example, the word by word translation, the transliteration, the fluent translation, the grammar markings, all that good stuff. I was never able to find it in one screen. I had to go to multiple resources. So I've created videos with all of that on one screen. And you guys can take advantage of that for free. I try to post a new surah every week. So thanks for tuning in, and subscribe if you want to be notified about the upcoming videos. Thanks.